All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another video. Again, this is kind of a bonus video. I wasn't really planning on going this far, but I figured, what the heck, I'm not that sleepy yet. How about a look at how we can create a button from scratch, just in code? So that's what we're going to do here. This time around, let's just jump right up here and go ahead and create an instance variable in our MyAppDelegate class for holding a reference to our button. So in here, I'm going to do a UI button. And once again, we'll use my button as the name. So using the old my thing. Come down here and let's go ahead and set up our property. And once again, non-atomic. And we're going to retain it. And a UI button for my button. So now we've supplied the compiler with instructions to make sure that's saved. I'm going to jump back over into the implementation file. I'm going to jump back up here and make sure to synthesize my button. So there you go. So that's in good shape. And me, I'm just a stickler. I like to come down here and make sure I release stuff like that in Dialect, just so I don't forget later on. So we'll just simply say my button, release, like such. Excellent. Now we're ready to create a button. So let's come in here and add some comments. Create a button. So for creating the button, I'm going to start out by making a few variables to basically define a button width, the button height, and the X and Y location in which I would like to place this button on my view. So again, starting out with a CG float, and this will be button width. And let's just give it something like maybe 200. A CG float, this one will be button height. And that's maybe 34 pixels. Next, let's do X and Y. So another CG float for X. And let's just start out by taking this guy and slamming him up against the left wall. But let's push him down because we have that label up there. So let's go ahead and do one more CG float for Y. And this time around, I'm going to push it down, I don't know, maybe 80 pixels sounds good. So we'll go with 80. All right, so now that we have some variables in place for defining width, height, and a location, let's see how the button is created, because this is a bit different. We're not going to be calling alloc this time around with the button. So I'm going to simply start out with my button equals, and I'm going to simply make a call to UI button, and I'm going to say button with type, and this is going to return me back my button. So button with type. So I'm just going to simply jump over. There are several types that I can use. In this particular case, the most simple button you can create. I'm going to do a UI button type, let's see, rounded rec. Okay, so there's your typical rounded rec button. Nothing fancy at all. So we'll put that into place. And now with that, I need to come in here and do a call to my button. And I need to set the frame. And with the frame, I'm going to basically create, so CG rect, make, like such. And we have an X already. We have a Y already. We have a button width. And we have a button height, like such. Excellent. So now that we have that in place, the only thing we have left to do is to take our newly created button and add it in as a subview to my view so that we can see it. So we can just come in here, and I'll just push this one down. We're going to do a call to my view, and we're going to say we're going to add a new subview, and the subview is going to be my button, like such. Okay, that's it. With that in place, we should see a simple button as long as I have no typos in here. Let's go ahead and do a Command S. I'm going to build. See, I just had this gut feeling that I had left off something like a square bracket. That's why I didn't hit Command R. So let's just go ahead and close that square bracket off. So again, Command S. Now I feel confident. So I'll go ahead and hit Command R. Boom. Ooh, we have a button. No text in it because we haven't specified any text. Let's see. If I click it, look at that. Nothing happens, but it responds. It knows how to handle being clicked on. It just doesn't have anything set up for us to do. So we'll get around to that here in just a second. Let's go ahead and jump out of this. Come back into our button. Now let us go ahead and set up a title so that we've got some text on it. And to do that, I'm simply just going to come up under here and do my button, and we will simply set the title. And this is but what we're doing here is going to be set title for state. That's the method that we're calling. So the title portion is going to simply be, I don't know, click me. I'm having a hard time being creative now. And for state is going to be set to UI control state normal. There's like 4 different control states that we can have, and basically what they do is they represent like normal state if it's disabled, several states like that. So quickly, let me just throw a UI control state normal. Okay, so this normal state of the button, that's how the text needs to be. So we'll close that off, make sure everything there looks good. So we'll do a Command S, and we'll go ahead and build, and let's go. So click me. Yay, it now wants to be clicked. So if I go in here, nothing happens. But before we get carried away with functionality, let's take a look at how we can center this up. By now, you should be thinking to yourself, it's easy. All we need to do is come back to where we'd said slam it up against the left side with 0 and replace that with something that, takes a look at the width of our screen, but now we have to subtract away from that half of the button's width. And that's what I was talking about earlier with the UI label, that we would be showing that technique coming up. So I was able to show 2 different ways to go about centering something up. So in this case here, what we're going to do is simply come in and say my view dot bounds dot, and we're going to come in with the size dot, and we're going to come in with the width, and we're going to say divide it by 2, and then from that we want to subtract away half of the button's width. So we're just going to say button width divide it by 2. It's easy as that. Command save, command execute. Centered up button. Fantastic. So the only thing that's left, well, you know what? Just before we get out of here, let's take a look at another way that we can play with the text. Let's make the text more in your face, just to see something slightly different with working with fonts. So after setting all that up, let's just come down here and add in, how about this? Let's just say my button, because this will be a little interesting. Title label. Let's take that guy and set the font. So set font. And then with set font, what I want to do is come in and say UI font, bold, system font of size, and then give it a size of, I don't know, maybe 20. I don't want to get too terribly big. So we'll just jump over here and give it 20, like such. And close that off, and then close that guy off, terminate, Command S. This allows you to at least see something else playing with fonts. And let's make sure it works. Let's go ahead and do a Command R, and now it's a little bit more in your face. So all that is left at this point is to add some quick functionality in, and then we can wrap up our very first mini project of putting together an application from scratch. So let's go ahead and jump out of this, back over here into Xcode. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and declare and set up the framework for a method. And that'll be the method that gets called when or a user clicks on the button. So I'm going to come back up here to the header. And remember where we had put methods are going to go down here. Oh, let's go ahead and take advantage of that. So we need to declare within the interface portion of our class a method. I'm going to simply say that this guy returns nothing. I'm going to call it my button clicked. And my button click, tink, needs to take, well, it doesn't have to, but you should. In this particular case, we should take in a parameter, and that parameter is going to be of type ID. So they're very generic with any object coming in. And we're going to call it sender. So if we had multiple buttons calling this function, I could then use sender to figure out what button was actually clicked on to call me. So with that in place, now I'm just going to go ahead and, what am I doing? I'm suffering with the hour. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to terminate that because I was getting ready to turn my declaration into an actual implementation. So with that in place, let's go ahead and Command S to save, and let's copy this guy So we'll just do a Command C, and I'm going to jump over here into the implementation file and jump down up under or between our two methods that we do have, and let's just do a Command V to paste. And now I can come in here and implement this guy. So we'll simply say starting, closing, and now I can put code in here. But how do we call this? How do we tell the button that he needs to call this? Actually, very straightforward and easy to do. I just need to basically set up the target and the action, more or less. So I'm going to come all the way back up here to my button, and we're going to tell my button. So my button is going to add a target to it. Now, what does a target mean? The target is where I am going to be looking for a particular selector or a particular method. Let me leave it at just that. So I'm going to jump over, and the target in this particular case is going to be self. I use self because remember we're running in an instanced copy of my app delegate, which means I have an instanced variable right here, and it's within this object. So I'm just calling the I'm calling the method within myself. So I'm going to say the target is myself. The action. The action, what's required over here is going to be a selector. Now, what the selector is going to have inside of it is going to be your method name with parameters or number of parameters taken. The idea is that the selector, it's going to be responsible of looking through a table with all of the methods in it, trying to match up a method with the selector name here. And as soon as we find one that matches, boom, we're going to execute that method. And that is the whole idea behind dynamic binding with the runtime for Objective-C. Now, if it does not find that method or a method that matches, then it uses the ISA pointer that points to the superclass that this class that has come from. In this case, it's NSObject, and it's then going to look at NSObject to see if that method existed. But of course, in this case, it is going to exist because we just set it up. So let's go ahead, jump over, and well, I try not to yawn. That's horrible. So let's go ahead and set our selector up now, which is very straightforward with just @selector. And then our selector is going to hold inside of opening and closing parentheses. It is going to hold the name of the method that we're going to look for and call, which is my button clicked. But here's the kicker. Don't forget to put the colon right there. We need to tell it that we're looking for a method named my button click that takes in a single parameter. And that's what we're defining right there. And so then the final thing is to come over here for control events. So basically, what event occurs to the button that makes this method get called? And with the iPhone, now there's a bunch of different events that we can do dealing with touches and all. The specific one that we're going to use is going to be the touch up inside. And what that means is when you touch the phone, we don't want the event to get fired right then because a user can slide their finger off the button, and once it's off the button, they could pick their finger back up, and that's kind of a way of canceling an operation that you're doing in an iPhone app. That's very common. So if you use the event touch up inside, that means the event fires when a user's finger comes off of the display, so it comes off of the button. So the finger needs to be inside the button, which is why it's a touch that's inside, but we're coming up, so it's touch up inside. So when you're coming back up, that means you push the button and you came straight up off of it. So that's the one we want to use. So basically, all I need to do is come in here and say UI control event touch up inside, and there we go. And then make sure I close off the entire thing, terminate that, Command S, and let's go ahead and do a Command B, make sure I don't have any spelling in there. There we go. Everything looks good. So now we've basically said, look, button, when a touch up inside event occurs, you need to call my button clicked, and that guy exists on you. And hey, it does. It's right here. So all I need to do is come in here and put some sort of functionality, and this functionality, let's just do something really, really simple. Let's basically assign new text to our label. Let's change the label text. That'll be interesting to see. So we'll just say assign new text to the label, like such. So the first thing is going to be my label. It's really nice now that we are holding a reference to our label inside of our object, so I don't have to worry about scope problems here, when before I was just creating it locally within the application did finish launching method. So we can now just come in here and we can say, look, take the text and we want to set that to something like, let's see, where is my @ symbol? There we go. Something like almost done. Yay. All right. And then from there, I need to come in here, and because if I don't do this, this is actually going to cause a problem. Actually, it's good to see problems. So how about we just leave it as simple as that, because that will at least show us our text change. So let's go ahead and save, and then build and go. And what happens when I click the button? Does it blow up, or does this change? And if this change, watch what happens to it. Ooh, it changed. It's no longer centered. We need to make sure that it's centered, and if we had a frame around it, that frame is also going to be extended a little bit longer now because it wasn't sized to this. So let's go ahead and just jump on out. We'll come on back. Now what I want to do is go ahead and make sure that I call my label size to fit. So that takes care of problem A, which is the frame not being the size that it needs to be. Now I need to simply recenter it up. And with that, I can be a little lazy by coming back up to the label. Here we go. And I can use the exact same code. I can say, you know, for center X, we'll simply divide the width of the view bounds size, and then we can do the same for that. We can do that, and we can even do that. So I'm just going to do a Command C. Let's jump back down. So in here, just reusing a little code. Command V, paste that in, and we'll still keep it pushed 20 pixels down. So with that, let's make sure that it just stays centered up, and the only thing that happens is the text changes. So Command S, Command R, get the simulator going. Here we go. Let's make sure she stays centered. Boom! And it works perfectly. So now you guys have seen how you can go about creating a button through code and hooking it up in such a way that you can cause it to fire off methods to do functionality when a user interacts with that button. And that is going to conclude this little mini series on how to create a very, very basic iPhone application from scratch. I mean, we really did do a ground up application, starting out with an empty project, having absolutely nothing in it, getting that project set up, and then going in and adding our own empty files, and then inside those files setting up things like our main function, our application delegate class, etc. So I do have other from scratch videos that are being planned and hopefully recorded here within a very short amount of time. Keep a watch out for these, because I plan to show going back and introducing things like UI view controllers and getting them set up properly, and how we can take advantage of what they bring to the table. And by doing that, we're going to start dealing with more classes, but it's going to start looking more and more like some of the iPhone application templates that you can use right now. So that's pretty much it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for bearing with me. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I've been up for not quite 24 hours, but I'm starting to push it. But I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get these videos encoded and put up for you guys. Let me know if you found them helpful or you enjoyed them. Let me know if you absolutely hated them and you don't want to see any more of these. Who knows? Actually, don't send me anything negative. But yeah, no, seriously, let me know if you like them, and we'll see if we can get some more interesting stuff going on. I've got some really neat stuff planned for OpenGLES coming up too, that some of you guys that are into graphics might really dig. But that is going to bring this video to a close. My final thing that I want to say before saying goodbye is, remember, this is not how an iPhone application is created. You generally start with a new project and you select a template that matches pretty much what you're looking to create. And then from there, you're going to be working with view controllers, etc., etc. I've done everything in a very linear fashion here just to make it easy to see what's going on. But thanks again for bearing with me as it's late, and that's going to wrap up the video. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'm out of here. We'll see you.